We're live. We're on Baitman Raw. Well, we're not live. This is pre-recorded, but I have got my good friend Mark Menendez in the house. He is here. So we tried to do this podcast like 3 months ago, Mark, and I forgot to turn the mic on.
Is that called technical difficulties?
Technical difficulties. So I really apologize. But Mark, you're a Bassmaster OG now. You're one of the original Elite Series guys. How does that feel?
Well, it's been a snapshot in time. During this quarantine, I've been playing on the computer and going back and doing some research on tournaments that I fished and money finishes and other tournaments. And I got back to that Amistad tournament in 2006, the very first one. And we've got a few of the guys still on the Elite Series that are those original guys. Not many, but I looked at some pictures and my hair was a heck of a lot darker back then than it is now.
Yeah, and you know, your hair may be darker, but I actually had hair. Mine's starting to fall out. Those old, the first couple seasons of the Elite Series, man, some amazing events. You mentioned Amistad. I remember the Clear Lake event with Steve Kennedy on the big swim bait. You fished that event.
I did.
Did you catch any of those big swim bait fish?
I caught a couple. I had another deal going that got me a check in that event, and I was old schooling it then. I was casting a 6-inch lizard on a 1/4-ounce sinker to one place and caught like 75 pounds out of one little turn in a creek.
That's crazy. I really didn't mean to go this way, but do you think the Bassmaster Elite Series will ever go out west again?
I don't know. You know, right now, the ways the situation is in our country with distance and travel and things like that, I hope we do. I always enjoyed going out west. It's a beautiful drive. It's a great place to clear your mind, and the fishing out there is stellar. I really love fishing out west. It's so different in the above water. Your vantage, your view is so different. The fishing's still the same, and they've got some good fisheries out there.
Absolutely, man. That really opened a lot of people's eyes to Clear Lake, and you know. And then you went to Texas. You said Amistad, the Falcon events. I watch that stuff all the time. The $1 channel on YouTube. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I've been playing on there, looking back at old tournaments, old Bassmaster events, and seeing a lot of people that aren't with us anymore. A lot of anglers have passed away. A lot of anglers are not fishing with us anymore, and other anglers are fishing different circuits. So it really goes back to some old, wonderful, warm times and warm memories in my mind. And I've just been very fortunate to do this as long as I have.
Now, do you think fishing's tougher now than it was before, or do you think the level of competition's totally different than it used to be?
Well, I think the level of competition has gotten so much better, just due to information, due to the internet, due to how young anglers assimilate information, and their availability to getting that information is so much faster than even 2006. So you back up to 1991, 92, my first season, all you had was Bassmaster Magazine.
Right.
And then you'd have the Bassmaster television show, and you'd have to wait a week to see the next episode, but it was months in production before you actually got it. So now the kids can watch me on Bass Live and sit on the Elite deal and see me build a bait or create a new technique, and in 30 minutes they can be out on their pond or their local lake doing exactly what I was doing. So yes, information has sped up. The young guys are very competent and comparable anglers, and they are as good or better than we were in our beginning stages.
Absolutely. We're going to get back to that topic here in a little bit. We'll talk the whole YouTube and the craziness that is the current fishing state. But I want to ask Mark, well, I kind of know what you've been doing since we've had this whole Corona quarantine thing. The main deal is y'all aren't fishing. No one's fishing. There's no tours, no bass, no MLF, no FLW. It's pretty much, if you go to the lake, you're just going to fish. Mark, we've been working on a TV show, MM Bass TV.
Correct. Mark Menendez Bass TV.
And we've got to fish Kentucky Lake a few times. And you know what? There's hope.
There's a lot of hope there, Kevin. And, you know, the first episode we went to film was in early April. The water had shot up above Summer Pool about 3 feet and plenty of cover. And there was a lot of bass up shallow. The most amazing thing is that spawn from 3 years ago, they're all now 14.5 to 15 inches. And in a matter of, well, it was the first stop we made. In a matter of 25 or 30 minutes, we had 6 or 8 fish catches. And we were well on our way to filming a show and getting a show completed. So during that day, a little bit later on, we got greedy and fished a little bit longer and caught lots of those 14, 15 inchers, started catching a few that were 17, 18, 19 inches. And then I luck into a 6-pounder. So we've got those old fish that are great brood stock. We still don't have that 3.5 to 4 pound fish that Kentucky Lake is so noted for, but we got scads, 1.5 to 2 pounders coming in. I am so excited about the future of Kentucky Lake. We caught largemouth and smallmouth. I've seen some spotted bass since then. I haven't seen those in our lake in quite some time, but the numbers of largemouth bass that are in Kentucky Lake are up considerably from what it was in the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys that don't know, I filmed television shows, edited them all my life, and before you put commercial breaks, you only really have about 18 or 19 minutes you have to get in there, and
Correct.
that really amounts to only about 4 or 5 fish catches.
Mm-hmm.
But you always want to get 10 to however many. I mean, Jason Quinn caught 100 one time, and it was just so many fish catches. I was like, holy cow! But we've filmed 3 times, I believe, now on Kentucky Lake, and we've pulled out a show each time, and I'm excited. I don't even want to say there's hope. It's going to get good, and we got a window coming up. We got a full moon next week. There's going to be fish moving out. I think there's fish out there. You're going to have the last females that are hanging around. They're going to push up. Could have some really good fishing next week.
It will be, and I fished this past weekend with one of my longtime friends, David Hutchison. We've been friends since we were 5 years old, and I caught 3 out on a ledge. I caught 3 on a drop. It's one of those first places they move to before they move out to the main lake. It was a bay drop. And so we've got fish in all stages. The last few fish are coming in. You've got fish that have maintained the shallow water, and then you've got fish that are starting to turn and head out. So it's the thing that I like the most, Kevin, that I'm seeing on my depth finders, particularly my live scope looking out in front of the boat, how many bait fish I'm seeing.
Oh, yeah.
The bait fish were the first things that kind of took it on the nose when our population crashed a couple, 3, 4 years ago. And now they're shad everywhere. So that's a huge thing. And then all my crappie fishing buddies have had a great spring, catching a lot of 1.75 to 2.25 pound crappie. Now, those are giants. And these are coming from reputable guys. I'm seeing the pictures, and I haven't eaten any of the fillets yet, but I've seen an awful lot of good crappie. So I'm just excited. Yeah,
me too. So that brings me in. You got a new sponsor this year, Mark. And if you guys that were at the Classic or maybe watch some of the highlights on Bassmaster Live, Mark has a new sponsor. It's not just Yamaha, but Yamaha Right Waters. Explain what Right Waters is doing for the fishing industry.
Well, Yamaha is one of the only manufacturers that is really concerned with the future of our sport, being limitations on where anglers can fish, creel limits, and things like that. So they came to me with my background in fisheries biology. I've been with Yamaha since 2002. And they came to me and says, hey, we want you to go to Washington, D.C. with us, and let's talk to some of the senators and lawmakers and Federal Fish and Wildlife, Director Skipworth at Fish and Wildlife. And we were able to come away with great meetings, and we ended up getting $25.2 million for the Tennessee and Cumberland Rivers to fight Asian carp. So they want to push this further, and it's their conservancy group is what Right Waters is. And we're out there on the behalf of all fishing license holders, all people that like to fish, trying to keep our waterways open and opportunities open for fishermen of all shapes, colors, breeds, water, saltwater, freshwater. The snapper issue has been a hot topic in the Gulf of Mexico for years, and Yamaha has helped make some strides in that. So we're working with those ideas and put me in the forefront of that to talk to our governmental officials. And I'm very pleased and proud to wear that shield on my jersey. I have my truck wrapped, my boat wrap obviously has that on there. So we're making great strides on behalf of all anglers with Yamaha Right Waters.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. There's been a lot of awesome things going on here in Western Kentucky for the fight against Asian carp. I want to give a good shout out to Wade White over in Lyon County, Judge Executive. That guy, he needs to run for a big office position. He gets stuff done, and he's also a super nice guy, but he really cares about fishermen and making our lakes great. So shout out to Wade White. I know you've worked with Wade quite a bit.
I have. Wade truly is the unsung hero in all of this. He was kicking up dirt when nobody else was. He was screaming and jumping up and down saying, hey, we've got an issue here. He started to see his economy in his county starting to head downward in a spiral. And Wade was very instrumental in this. I enjoy working with Wade because you get yes and no answers out of Wade.
Absolutely.
Yes, we can do it. No, we can't. And I like working in those type situations where I have those parameters. He helped get a fish processing place put in place for Lyon County in Western Kentucky. And we were able to get 6 million pounds of Asian carp out of Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. We're scheduled to get 8 to 9 million out next year. This past Sunday, while I was fishing with my buddy David, saw some carp guys out there putting out some nets. We had an experiment with the unified modified method come in here that Congress allowed us to do more studies on the most efficient way to get the carp out of the water. And then we have used some experimental nets as well, some experimental purse seines that have been extremely effective to the tune of 2 boats getting 60,000 pounds out of the water in 2 days of netting. So that's amazing. Getting those fish out of the system into food products, into fertilized products, all these things that we can use these Asian carp for to utilize the resource, to monetize them. The monetization of the fish, I want people to know that this is not a burgeoning industry. We want to get these fish out of the water, get them under control, and not have to worry about them. So the monetization of it is not we're not looking for this to be an industry that's going to last forever, just a short-term deal to get them out of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I know people are worried about that, and you hear the conspiracy theory. People say, "Oh, now that the government can make some money, they're only going to get X amount." I can trust me on this. Ron Brooks, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, he wants them gone, but it's not going to be an instant process. It's going to take 2, 3. It may take 10 years to get those numbers where they're not going to ever be extinct. But maybe every time you go back in the bay, you don't notice them all the time. Exactly. We're just going to have to live with it.
Exactly, for the short term. And we have the bioacoustic fish fence that was put in below Barkley, and that research is ongoing to see the fish movements. We're stopping the fish movement in Barkley. As Kentucky Lake's new lock gets developed, my hopes are that we've got 2 of those on those new locks on Kentucky Lake. And if that's the case and they work well, even if they work at 50% of all the fish that are trying to get through, that's a major improvement on eradicating and stopping the movement of those fish through the Tennessee River and other places. So we're working. It's just slow go. It's just a slow go.
I hate it. Always feels like Kentucky and Barkley Lakes are the guinea pig. But let's be honest. These are 2 huge lakes from dam to dam. But we're trying to make sure that Pickwick, Wilson, and the Big G, Gunnersville, does not have to suffer what we've been through. Because I'm going to tell you, Gunnersville is an awesome place, special fishery, but that is a fishing town. It would totally devastate Gunnersville.
It would wreck that part of Alabama with the economic devastation that they would see, that what we've seen here on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. The bad news is during the Bassmasters Classic official practice day, Lee Livesey caught an 85-pound big head carp, snagged it in the back with a crankbait. In the second day of the Bassmaster Classic, I saw 6 silver carp in the current behind a dock, filter feeding their way behind the dock, and they were all about 6.5 pounds. So they're there. They're in the Tennessee River all the way up into Chick. They've been seen in Chick. They've been jumped in a couple of boats there in Chick, so verified by Tennessee Fish and Wildlife. But we want to slow that down as much as we can. We're gaining ground. It's just we got a long way to go, and we're gaining ground.
Yeah, I really don't want to freak the people of Gunnersville out, because your population of Asian carp is probably what we had in the mid to late 90s. Just a few there and here. But the problem is, a few there and here, it don't take but a few years to...
They can catch up
They can catch up really quick. And Gunnersville's got a whole lot more plankton and algae and stuff to make those fish feed a whole lot quicker. Now, from my experience, bow fishing for them, especially in the fall, they don't like those big mats. They don't like the matted grass, but they will kind of mow them down. They get in those big packs, and they go and they kind of uproot the grass. They're not eating it like grass carp, but what they are is when they go across the bottom and everything, they don't allow the vegetation to hold, because, man, these things get huge wolf packs. But you also brought a new sponsor aboard. I've known for a long time. You're a big Gamakatsu fan.
I've always used Gamakatsu hooks, and I'm thrilled to work with them now. And, it's a lot of confidence when you have the sharpest hook on the end of your line. I'm going to catch more fish. And it's the only hooks in my boat. They've always been that way, and this is the first time I've ever had a hook sponsor in all these years. So I'm really pleased to work with them. And a secondary sponsor that goes along with the conservation side of that is AFCO, American Sport Fishing Tackle.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one. They are big time on the bass fishing scene and big time in the conservation scene.
Well, 10% of all of AFCO's sales go to conservation. I don't know if you knew that or not. They've been doing this for years. And when they saw my activity with Yamaha Right Waters, they came to me and says, we want to help you. We want to partner with you and help you. And I've got a couple things up my sleeve. There's going to be I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. There's going to be an opportunity for all anglers to help us with this Asian carp fight here shortly with some clothing. There's also going to be some money given by AFCO directly to the Asian carp fight, and we'll go into that on our next podcast. But they want to ensure they're giving back to the fishery, both saltwater and fresh, with 10% of everything that they sell. Their money's come in, it goes out in conservation. And so with that kind of integrity, I'm truly honored and blessed to work with those folks for them to choose me to help work with them.
Not to mention, they actually make really good stuff.
Oh, golly, the sun gear, the rain gear, the gloves, the Salago gloves that I've been wearing for the last 6 months, man, just unbelievable stuff. Performance wear for performance fishing.
Yeah, I really like I guess it's the Hydronaut rain suit that Mark's been wearing. It's pretty cool. It's definitely a layer deal, but I like is the way the bibs are. Once you get your top off and all that, and you're down to your bib layer, it's not just the straps like most guys. It's almost like I hate to say it, Larry the Cable Guy deal. It's a sleeveless vest / suit, but it's comfortable. It's kind of almost like the Sitka gear vest that guys use to hunt in, but it looks very comfortable. I don't have one yet, so hopefully AFCO hears this and they send the camera guy some stuff. But we've been lucky filming this year. We went for a few months. The weather, though, did not cooperate with us at all.
It's been tough. We've had to pick and choose where we were going to fish and how we were going to fish. And a couple of times we only had some 1.5 to 2 hour windows and were successful enough to get a show in before a big major front came in. And so I'm excited about what we've got on film at this point. There's a lot of things there. There's a lot of variety. There's a huge variety on the tactics that we use. Our local venues, we film in the Western Kentucky area. We've been on the river. We've been on the lake. We've been on some private lakes. We've been in standing timber. We've been in vegetation. We've been in a very completely different environment. So, and we've been lucky enough to be successful at all of it. So the third season of Mark Menendez Bass TV, which will air on WPSD, Paducah, Channel 6, and NBC affiliate, should be a good one. A lot of surprises.
So me and Mark's talked about, we're probably going to upload some old episodes to Mark's YouTube channel, which is MM Bass TV, and I'm going to get on the ball with that. He brought me a hard drive with old stuff. We're going to have a lot of extra stuff after shooting some of these stuff, so you're going to see a lot of little tips and stuff. But one thing I'll tell you from filming Mark, and guys always ask, well, how do you learn all this stuff, Baitman? You know, I've been blessed to be in the boat with guys, but Mark is about as old school fisherman as it gets. And after we film, if we got time, we fish together, and he absolutely has whipped me. He doesn't pull out any of that swim bait magic very much.
Not much, but I tied some on the other day and went down one stretch and had 7 or 8 bites real quick and destroyed an expensive swim bait. And so it's neat. As we become older, we're less open to change. We know what the success rate we've had doing whatever technique is, and we get comfortable with that. But I've had a lot of fun playing with swim baits, whether it's a big paddle tail swim bait like a Shadalicious or a tennis shoe style swim bait, for the lack of a better term. 6-pound test line, braid to fluoro combos, which it's neat to see things help you become a better angler. And that's what we all need to do, is keep our mind open, be willing to change, because our environment changes all the time, and it helps me down the line when I need to go to 6-pound line versus 25-pound line, which I'd rather have 25-pound line. I won't lie to you, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
I'd rather have a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. I'd rather have a 6XD or a 10XD, but sometimes that's just not the way to go. And you have to use a Nico rig or a wacky rig or some little small drop shot like a dream shot or something like that. So staying versatile is why I'm still in the game. That's helped me throughout my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned so much, and back in the day, the way the whole Elite Series has changed, you didn't see a lot of guys with spinning rods on deck unless they're super clear water, or maybe you're going up north to a St. Clair or something like that. But now you're seeing guys spinning rods on Lake Fork. You're seeing guys Kentucky Lake, Brett Hott, years ago, Bass Fist, crushing them on the Nico rig. People are like, why has this guy got a spinning rod? Oh, I don't need that. Now, dude, I own one. I know guys that have multiple spinning rods, and you're really good with it. But that whole thing has changed, where finesse fishing is going to make you checks. If you're good with a wacky rig, if you're a young angler listening to this, be good with a wacky rig.
Shaky head. A drop shot.
Drop shot. You can catch checks.
Absolutely. And one of the things, I've always used a spinning rod, Kevin. One of my favorite fishing heroes back in the day when I was 12 or 15 years old was Billy Westmoreland. And Billy Westmoreland was a smallmouth guy from Dale Hollow, and his quest to catch the world record, spinning rod was the way he had to fish. And he took that to the Bassmaster Trail in the mid 70s and won a couple of events on a spinning rod and made several Bassmasters Classic. Billy was a fantastic fisherman. So I read his books as a young person and decided very early on that 8-pound test line better be part of the equation for me. So I've never been scared of spinning reels. So I would say from my initial 1991 season, I probably had 30% spinning rods in the boat with me at all times. Now I'd say that's probably crept up to 45 to 50% of the rods in my boat are spinning rods and reels. So it is, as our reservoirs age, water clears, and that those lighter line techniques become very prevalent, such that it's how you have to catch fish at certain days. Here on Kentucky Lake, you may go out today, Kevin, and catch them good on a 10XD. Go out tomorrow and the conditions have changed. It's like a fish will not, it's like poison. A fish won't even use a 10XD. So you've got to drop down to 8-pound test line or 10-pound test line. You have to be adjusting at all times. And so many times in a multi-day tournament, I start off with that 20-pound flipping stick, and that 8-pound test line ends up in my hand. That Invisex, that Seaguar Invisex is the one I trust the most. It, doggone, I've caught some awful big fish on 6, 8, and 10-pound line.
Yeah. My buddy Justin Atkins there showed the world in that Major League Fishing at Lake Fork that you can catch a 10-pounder on 10-pound test with a spinning rod. I mean, the dude had an awesome event. But on the Elite Series, who is the best finesse fisherman out there?
Oh, all these young kids are really, really good at it. Brandon Cobb comes to my mind first. He dominated last year's Hartwell event with a spinning rod in his hand, led wire to wire, won the event. Drew Cook's good with it. Let's see. Little Shane LaHue, the baby shark, is awfully good with it. They all incorporate it. Jake Whitaker has always got one in his hands. And they're always got 5 fish in the live well.
Right.
It is just a tactic you have to learn. And I think these kids are learning this coming through the college ranks because they fish those big tournaments in college and lakes get beat up. They get beat up, and that lighter line is a sure way to get a bite.
So back to what we were originally start out, the amount of information now available, that used to not be there when I was a kid. When I had to learn to ledge fish, I actually had to go out there. I didn't have side scan, didn't have down imaging, had an X15 Lowrance, and I just went out there through a crankbait and Carolina rig. I had a map card, but you had to figure out what was on the bottom there.
Right.
And the way we graphed and found fish is you actually graphed, and when you found bait that's set up right on a ledge, which if you ledge fish, you know what I'm talking about. It's usually at the break. You started, your mouth watered. You knew there was probably going to be some bass there. Now, with down imaging side skin, these guys have learned that you don't even have to waste your time like with that. You just go up, you draw them dots. All they're there will make a few casts. But the learning curve, you got
faster.
You got YouTube, all these informational websites. I mean, if a kid is a decent fisherman, doesn't have to be the greatest. He can become very good in a quick amount of time if he'll put his time in on the water.
Yes, that's the basic key to it. You know, I used a flasher before then, flasher and a map, a paper map, and marker buoys, and would have to go out there and mark off a 200-yard section of ledge, fish that. If I didn't find, you know, a hard bottom or whatever, I'd had to do it with my rod and reel. It was a slow process. I'd fish a mile sometimes in a day of one ledge, but that would be flashing it, looking at it, dropping a marker buoy, and then come back and fishing it. Now I don't have to. Now I can ride from corner to corner to corner, but you end up having to learn some things that are different. Look at what you're looking at as far as contour lines. What does this mean? Where do mussels live? You better learn some biology to go along with it to understand that, yes, everybody can see on the mapping now, you can see where the points are. You can see where the good fish holding structure is laying out there in front of you. So you're seeing a lot more pressure on those. So you better learn some other techniques and tactics that gives you an advantage. Light line's one of them. Pressure makes those fish want to see something that's smaller. Moving up and down the ledge a little bit. Learning where these fish go to rest instead of where they feed. A community hole's a community hole because it holds fish.
Absolutely. Man. I mean, I fish them all the time. I'm not going to lie.
So a lot of times in tournaments that we have on the Bassmaster Tournament Trail, a community hole wins the tournament. But the guy's found something a little bit different. He moved from the end of that long point or that creek channel bend. He moved 100 yards left or right, or he moved up on the flat, or he saw something on a contour line that was a little tricky. Those are the places that you have to start looking for now.
Now you've got the introduction of Garmin Panoptics, and we've been playing with it. That thing for brush pile fishing grass, that's absolutely killer.
Absolutely. You look at edges. And bass are, they're a predator just like a coyote or a big cat or a dog or whatever, and they tend to roam the edges of the fields. They generally don't run across the middle of a field. And a bass is the same way. If you don't have cover up on top of that flat, he's going to be on that edge. Either they're at the break line or at the bottom of that ledge where it flattens out. He's going to roam those edges and find an ambush point. So I can see fish now that are in between, where without Panoptics and live scope, I was fishing those edges, and I would have to use my rod and reel to fish in between the bottom of the ledge and the break line or the top of the ledge. Now I can literally target fish that I see, and I catch a whole lot of them. So it's changed the game, and if you don't have live scope, you better look at investing, because it's helping me catch a heck of a lot of fish.
Absolutely. It's also frustrating when you see these fish and you can't get them to bite. That's more of an operator issue, but it just blows my mind how quick all this has happened. It seemed like once the side scan units from Humminbird came out, it's like buying a computer. You buy one, and in 3 months it's out of date. There's always something new. And I'll be honest, Mark, I'd love to see an old school tournament.
Oh.
No. You can have a graph, no GPS. You can't have side scan, Panoptics, all that. Just send them out there
with a paper map in your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so much fun, Kevin. I would enjoy that. I would see a lot of panic in these young guys' faces, and a lot of our pros that have gone to rely more on the electronics than natural instincts. So yeah, I would love to see that. I'd hate it because David Fritz would be so tough in it. Clun would be so tough in it. And I think I'd be one of those guys right there too. A flasher tells me things that you can't get on other devices. Now with the Garmin units, it's real time. And that's what makes live scope so cool. What I see is happening right now. There's not a delay in the computer processor in there. And it would be fun. It would be a lot of fun. And one of the things I'm looking forward to with this Corona is the tournaments getting pushed back. And it looks like if we get to fish this year, we're going to be fishing in the fall.
Right.
And that's a grinder deal. That's the fish are scattered from top to bottom in the lake. And I'm looking forward to some of those tournaments where I have to go looking for one fish at a time. 5-12 inches can be a big deal in some of those fall tournaments. So I'm looking for that as to be a definite advantage where we go to some of these lakes where they really get tough in that October, November, December time of the year.
So you like the grinder style events?
It's always been my favorite. Somebody's going to win the event, Kevin.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if it's a 5-pound average or it's a 1.5 pound average.
Somebody's
going to win the event. And anglers like Bill Lowen that gather them 5 every time they go out, they're going to have a heyday and make a lot of money this fall. Matt Herron's another guy that loves to grind one out. That's just tenacity and just fishing hard, being focused on getting 5 to 7 bites a day. And that's where efficiency comes in. Ultra sharp hooks like the Gamakatsu's, good line, the whole 9 yards. You can't make a mistake in those tournaments because you may not get that 5th, 6th bite to cull with. So those are tournaments that I really love. I've been very fortunate to figure out how to win several of those events. So I'm looking forward to a tough fall fishing.
Speaking of Matt Herron, is he the real deal jig fisherman? I've heard he's just nasty with the jig in his hand.
I don't like it when we have a tournament in which a jig plays hard, whether that's a cold weather tournament, whether that's a bush tournament, whether that's a dock fishing tournament. I don't like it because old Grumpy, I love him to death. I'm never nice to him, but I love him to death. Matt is so proficient with a jig and knows so many of the subtleties that help him get 1 or 2 extra bites a day that it puts him way ahead of the front. That's why Matt has always been so ultra consistent. Matt will get him 5, pick up a jig, get 1 more bite, and that's a 5-pound bite.
Right.
And when he gets 2 more bites, he's extra dangerous, but he gets that 1 more bite to get to differentiate himself and get him that strong paycheck finish.
He does have a dirty jig named after him, the Matt Herron flipping jig, which it's pretty nice. And shout out to Reaction Innovations too. His son Josh kind of runs that deal down there. And Josh is a great dude, a master bait man. I'll say they make good stuff, man. And I've only talked to Matt a couple times. He's always been super nice to me, but I really respect his game. He's old school. He's like you. He's going to throw a jig.
He's old. He's going to throw something big, but I tell you what, it's been a lot of fun watching Matt work hard and become very proficient with his electronics, and he's darn good with a darn spinning rod now. Don't think he doesn't like it, and he bitches and moans about it, but he has had some great finishes on deep water situations, some of those northern tournaments. He's going to gather him up some big ones every time.
So do you think the Elite Series will go back to fishing, yes or no? Or are we so far deep in the game that it's going to be really tough?
I'm still on the bridge with that. It's 50-50. If we see a resurgence of this virus in the fall, it's going to stop that. It depends on if these states allow us to come in, bringing all these other people out of state, out of country to their areas. There's a lot of parameters there. I know Bass has done some great things in trying to analyze this and cost average this. Tell you, one of the things they did, they forwarded every Elite Series angler a $2,500 check early on in this to help us get through this crisis. Now, that was money that we'll be taking out of the first tournament that we fished. That was an advance for all of our anglers. Made a heck of a difference in a lot of people's lives. And that's a huge shout out to Chase Anderson and Bruce Akins at Bass. Wow, thank you. I want that publicly stated and publicly known that they did that for us, that we're business partners. Not only do we have our own businesses in fishing, but we are business partners with them, and they want our health and welfare to be the very best. So I'm looking forward to trying to get a bait in the water and catch a few this fall with bass. And hopefully we will be able to do that and to get back to our lives, some normalcy in our lives.
That's awesome to hear that. I did not know that. So that's some news that may not be public info now that you're hearing here on Baitman Raw. Shout out to Bass. Those guys were awesome to me at the Classic. And dude, they put on the best event, man. They still do. Now let me ask you this. Speaking of the Classic, say you don't go fishing. What's going to happen on the Bassmaster Classic? next year?
Well, I don't know. That's one of the unknowns that happens when you're dealing with a virus like this, a pandemic, a health situation. I don't know. Our health is obviously more important than fishing, but fishing is our lives. So they're hand in hand as far as importance. It's how I make my living. It's how all of us like to recreate. We all need to recreate responsibly. That's a new hashtag out there that Yamaha is pushing. Recreate responsibly. So I'm sure Bass will make sure that we're all safe in what goes forward, and things are going to change. Tournaments may change quite a bit in the upcoming days.
Mark, there's so many good fishermen on the Elite Series, and people ask me all the time, well, who's the worst fisherman? Who's the best? I'm here to tell you, agree or disagree. If you make that Elite Series, it's not a gift. You earn the right to be one of the best fishermen in the world.
Well, I tell you, we had so many new fishermen come in, so many young guys that I had never fished with or fished against. I was amazed at their level of proficiency. The one thing that has happened is college fishing. And what these kids are getting in education in college fishing is they're getting to see so many different venues, so many different lakes, so many new techniques. So they're having to eliminate water and techniques fast. Well, that carried right over into the Elite Series. 20% of the Elite Series right now are former college champions, former college winners, former college anglers. And my goodness, did they come in. And they're all fearless. That's what's amazing to me. It's how fearless they are. Several of the other guys that came in, all accomplished fishermen. You get Angler of the Year, Scott Canterbury, a full-time angler prior to getting to bass. Now he's in his home swing, and god darn, the cat catches him everywhere he goes. So the competition level is fierce. And the one thing that I said when these guys came in after the first tournament last year at the St. Johns River, where I finished third and Rick Clunn won the event on the final day, was to all the reporters was, give me 4 tournaments and you're going to see the new names climb to the top. The Brandon Card, the Drew Cook, these kids that are Brandon Cobb, that won 2 events. And Card was a former college angler as well. So, you see these kids come in and in 3 or 4 events, they're at the top of the standings. By gosh, they made their credibility quick. And you're going to continue to see that trend day in and day out.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, Stetson Blaylock's now I consider a veteran angler, but I remember when Stetson first come on the scene with the FLW and all that, and now he's been with Bass a few years now.
Yeah.
Great fisherman. I consider him a young guy, but he's now a veteran.
Yeah, he's got 10, 12 years of experience behind himself, making a living in fishing, and so he knows what the pressures are. Made a run at Angler of the Year, won his first event this year. So I see Stetson putting a lot of momentum behind him and moving forward. It's great to see. I'm loving the fact that the sport is moving at Mach 1 ahead, and things are getting better and better and better. And it makes us better anglers, whether you play golf, whether you play tennis, whether you play baseball. Fishing against better people makes you a better. Playing the sport against better people makes you become a better angler. And it's neat to see that the sport's still moving forward.
I'm a pretty big fan of old David Mullins. Out there, East Tennessee, he's a Vol guy, so I support my Vols, but I just like the way Mullins carries himself. He ain't, he doesn't go crazy. He's just East Tennessee. He's a humble guy. And he throws that little Scottsboro swim bait, but he's a great crankbait fisherman.
Well, he's deadly with a plug. Deadly with a plug.
He's not sponsored by Strike King. And if you look at his photos, he's got some 5XDs and 10XDs. There's no paint on them, and he's still catching them on it.
Well, I gave him those 2 green gizzards that he caught them all at Cayuga, and I want them back, but he won't give them back to me. But David's just very slow about what he goes about doing. He doesn't get rattled. He's very stable. He's just a tremendous offshore angler that would prefer to fish offshore than have a flipping stick in his hand. So he's almost a specialist in that offshore type fishing. Just an unbelievable demeanor to get out there, and very proficient with his depth finders. Loves the side scan and the live scope with the Garmin. I don't think anything gets him as excited when he can see his plug come all the way back to the boat and watch one coming to get it.
Yeah, that's how I like to fish. So shout out to Mr. Mullins. I want to go fishing with you sometime.
I want to go duck hunting with him.
Yeah,
what I want to do.
Well,
He's
I tell
got
you
a
what,
little
Mark,
duck spot.
I know he goes duck hunting with my man down here in Union City, Mr. Ben Parker, Magnum Spoon. And I could probably slide a message to Ben, see if we couldn't fix that up. That'd be a cool Bass.
He's got
TV.
a little East Tennessee place he's been working on for several years. David has, and really enjoyed watching his Instagram posts on what he's doing down there to make duck hunting a heck of a lot better in East Tennessee.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. I mean, first time I ever met him or even seen him, I'm like, who's this Elite Series guy that's got a big old Power T on their camper? I'm automatically a fan. And then I see the bass highlights, and there he is in his Tennessee shorts fishing Kentucky Lake, catching them. So another guy I really like and I've kind of been friends with is Drew Benton. I like his demeanor, his approach, and he's one of those Florida Georgia line guys. Not the band, obviously, but
he probably likes them.
I don't know. I hate to ask him, but Benton, he can catch them.
Drew is the ultimate competitor. I don't know that there's one or two people more driven in tournament competition than Drew. The other thing about Drew is he's got as much as integrity as anybody out there. He is a fine sportsman, and he is one heck of a good angler. But his intensity is what pushes him over the top.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. I interviewed him every morning at the Bassmaster Classic. I was able to be at takeoff, and you could tell. I won't say he was nervous, but he was in his lane. He was focused, and they ended up having a pretty good event. I know he wanted to win that thing. Great grass fisherman, good with a bladed jig, great sight fisherman. There's not a whole lot Drew can't do, and he likes to deer hunt, and he's a nice guy. So when you get that combination, that's the kind of guys I like to root for. But
absolutely,
Mark, who's a guy that's on the Elite Series right now that you would feel that's kind of underrated? Not a lot of guys are talking about, but he's just laying back there, threat to win about any tournament.
Ooh,
it doesn't have to be a young kid. It could be someone that's been there.
So many, Kennedy is so up and down. Kennedy is either around the winners or he's having a tough tournament. When you see Kennedy in the standings on the first day of the tournament, he's back there in about 7th or 8th place, and he's a pound or two behind. You better watch out. Steve fishes quite differently and thinks quite differently. He's one that is really tough. When you see one of those grinder events, and he's proved it twice in the last few years, the old master himself, Rick Clunn, still obviously has it in him. He's a great friend and one of my heroes. I love to see a power fishing event, and Rick's going to be part of that game. Doggone the Canadians.
Oh yeah,
the Johnson brothers. So well-rounded, going for the throat all the time. Seth Fighter is coming into his own as an angler and is not afraid to go out there and do something wacky to get himself in position. Man, the list just goes on and on and on. And here's one that a lot of people may not know. He fished with us for a long time, made 5 Bassmasters Classics, 3 Angler of the Years on FLW. Clark Winlet. Clark has overcome some health problems, has gotten himself strong again. Clark is a diabetic and had a heart issue not long ago. But I'm seeing Clark become more relaxed back on the Bassmaster Trail, and I think you're going to see some great things out of Clark here soon.
And speaking of health, Shaw Grigsby, he is going through surgery to treat some, kidney cancer?
They found cancer in his kidney. I communicated with his wife, Polly. She is most hopeful that without any surprises, Shaw will be on the mend. Shaw was the first guy I drew. First day of competition that I ever fished a Bassmaster competition with in fall of 1991. He was my first day partner, and I've been friends with him ever since.
He's a super nice guy. I really enjoy being around Shaw. And, hey, at his age, he's still competing. And I don't mean he's just holding it down over in Major League Fishing. he's competing. He's trying to get to the final days. He's having some good runs.
He has had, and he's such a likable guy, and probably one of the pioneers in sight fishing, bringing that to the masses, showing them, not being afraid how to show people how to use that tube lure, using that light line, and catching those fish on beds. So an innovator and an awfully good person.
Speaking of sight fishing, this is something me and you've talked about in between not getting bites when we're filming our show. The most underrated sight fisherman that no one ever talks about, he doesn't fish anymore, is Claude, aka Fish Fishburne. How good was Fish Fishburne at sight fishing? Used to be one of your good friends.
We haven't been in a boat with him in years, but I've sight fished with him, and he's telling me what the fish is doing before I even see the damn thing. He had incredible vision, the best with a spinning rod ever. End of story. The most proficient angler I've ever fished with a spinning rod. But his ability to see was what put him. He could see fish that were a foot to a foot and a half deeper than what I could see. I have to see them up on the bank. Yeah. I don't have good vision, and I have to really work hard to catch those fish. But he could see them, and growing up on Clearwater Reservoir like Lake Lanier that he did, doggone, it was a pleasure to sit back and watch him work a fish. And then him coach me on how to catch some too was just a lot of fun.
Is there any guy that's not fishing right now that you wish still was?
Fish was such an idiot. We roomed together. We had a lot of fun together. He made fishing a lot more fun. I wish Nixon was fishing with us.
The general was a great guy.
I absolutely love Larry. Larry taught me a lot about the industry during some times when the boat companies that we were running had some financial times, hard times. Larry is truly an early innovator, and I give Larry credit for showing anglers how to slackline a bait, hop a bait up off the bottom, a jig, a Texas rig, which became a cult following here on Kentucky Lake.
The old jig stroking.
The old jig stroking deal. Well, that came from Larry. That came from Toledo Bend, and it came from Larry. Larry helped refine that, and so he's an innovator as well. And such a great sense of humor. Larry would bust your nose, and you didn't even know.
He's pretty active on the Facebook, and he makes me laugh quite a bit. I've been lucky. Me and my dad took Larry from the airport to Bass University event. This is before Ike and Ellie's crew got a hold of it, and super nice guy. I mean, he told me exactly where he caught all those fish on a jerk bait, how he was using it, the colors, and he knew every detail of that Kentucky Lake tournament. And that was, at the time, that was 15 to 18 years before.
It was 1993.
Yes, my dad actually checked me out of school to come to weigh in, and it was nasty. It was raining.
It was ugly. That was one of those tournaments that haunts me to this day.
But we found out we had a giant population of big smallmouth bass.
Yes, we did, and that was the eye opener there. And it was a perfect storm. It was a full moon in first week of April, and the water temperature was below 50 degrees, and those big smallmouth pushed shallow, and so did the big largemouth. But the big largemouth were staging to move in. The smallmouth started to move in, and it was just ridiculous. We had some unbelievable wind and weather. A day got canceled, and the third day of the tournament, I was 4 miles from the dam, made a quick stop, caught a 7-pounder, and was headed to my main stretch, and was unable to fish it because the wind pushed out of the north at 25 to 35 miles an hour, and it took me almost an hour to come back 4 miles to the dam that afternoon. It was an amazing day, and I think 60 boats that went to Paris never made it back. They called for trailers and didn't bother.
Yeah, that's crazy. And if you've never been on Kentucky Lake, or if you're from Kentucky Lake, 4 miles ain't far. You're not even to Moores, I don't believe.
Yeah, you're just past Little Bear.
Yeah, that ain't far at all. I mean, that's literally a 5-minute boat ride.
Exactly. And it took me 45 minutes to get in.
That is crazy. Was that in the Champion or the Hydro Sport?
That was in my old Hydro Sport, and an LS 180, and great riding boat, but it was just so incredibly rough. And so it's probably the worst day on the water I've ever spent on Kentucky Lake. And I've been in some ugly days on Kentucky Lake, but that one was tough.
So let's talk about this. Now we've gone from Hydro Sport. You ran Champion a little bit back in the day. And then late 90s, could be wrong on this, we went to Skeeter, and you've been with Skeeter ever since.
Well,
correct?
It was actually the early 2000s.
Okay.
You know, I've used 4 boats. I bought my first Old Champion boat. That was the first glass boat I had. Got out of that quick once I qualified for the top 100s and got into a hydrosport. Hydrosports were stopped. They quit production on freshwater in 1998 after I won my first Bassmaster event. So I rolled into a Stratus and ran a 201 for a while, and then moved over to the Skeeter line. Have been there ever since. And in a Eufollow event, back when Bass still put us in their boats, I was running the Yamaha already, so they put me in a Skeeter boat. And the Skeeter boat allowed me to get over a little sandbar to an area of unfished water in a Eufollow tournament that I led the tournament after the 3rd day. I caught 24-15 in a matter of 15 minutes once I got over this little puddle of water, this little sandbar to get in this puddle of water. And I realized that my boat had become a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 months later, I'm in another final, and I'm out fishing offshore like I like to on the Coosa River, cranking a Strike King crankbait. And there was boats and pontoons and jet skis, and the lake was torn up on Lake Jordan. And I was not taking any water over the front of a Skeeter boat. And at that point, I made my mind to get to a tool that would help my fishing. And I've made thousands of dollars, thousands of classics, won a couple events because of it, getting to places that I other boats can't get to, or being more stable out there. And so the Skeeter boat has been a big factor in this latter part of my career.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Skeeter. I owned one. It was ZX225. Man, I'll be honest, with the 225 Yamaha, the old HPDI, that thing would haul the mail. I mean, I could run 73, but it was a great, stable fishing boat. And I really think the Skeeter, and I'm not just saying this because I've told guys many times, is one of the best shallow water fishing boats you'll find. It's just stable. It's wide. When you're flipping and pitching, you know, some boats, the gunnel's a little high, and you're always donk, hitting it, or you're a bad caster like me. But, you know, bass boats have really evolved from what they used to be. They're a lot safer, too.
They are a lot safer. You've got flotation. You've got stability. They're bigger. They're wider. They ride better. They fish better. So the latter changes have just been in the interior, how the boat's laid out. So manufacturers have played with that. But for me, the way I like to fish, I'm just as comfortable in 6 inches of water as I am in 60 feet of water. That Skeeter boat is the platform for me. It just aids in everything I need to do, whether I've got to go through rough water to get to those fish, whether I've got to go through skinny water to get to those fish. And the people at Skeeter boats is what makes it so great. During the time period when my wife was ill, it was a great support system. Those folks checked on me. They made sure that we were in good shape, and they furthered my career in a time period in which I didn't know if I was going to ever fish again when my wife was ill with cancer. So a great amount of love for those people, and an appreciation for such a great product.
Right. You know, a lot of people forget these sponsor relations. It's more than just you getting a paycheck. A lot of it's, can you be family with somebody? And you know, unfortunately, when Donna passed, that was great for them to reach out to you and give you emotional support and stuff like that. That, I know that was a hard time for you. We didn't talk a lot that time, and that doesn't mean anything bad. We've been friends forever.
Sure.
But, you know, you were with me when my dad had a really bad stroke. I mean, right there during an Elite Series event, you took care of him, did what you could, but you can't stop fishing a tournament or anything like that. But you called, you checked in, you didn't bother me. And sometimes it's just small things, just checking on, or is there anything you need, that goes a really long way. So, and Mark, dude, if it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't know you. Well, now, he's an ornery old fart. I'm not going to lie.
He is.
He still uses monofilament on everything.
It's because he's cheap. It's because he's cheap. But, yeah, you forge friendships in fishing, that fishing is the vehicle that brings you together. And then once you fish with somebody and become friends with them, then life starts to evolve. And fishing is such a big part of that. And that's the greatest thing about fishing. We are one community. We care about other anglers. We care about what's going on in their lives. And that time period really showed me what fishermen are all about. And that's other fishermen and pushing the sport forward, and those that are involved in it, keeping those people moving forward. So I've got some people that are having health issues right now in my life, and they were very supportive of me when my wife was ill. So you push those forward, Kevin. You pay that help forward. You know, when the event happens, when I lost Donna, what the most amazing thing was, it wasn't the people that were checking on me when she was alive, because I was so focused on her day-to-day needs. It was those that checked up on me a week and a half, 2 weeks after the funeral, because the quiet is deafening at that time period.
Absolutely.
And I've got some friends that have lost some loved ones that are on my things to do list to talk to them here shortly and just say, hey, I get it. I understand. I'm here for you. I'm thinking about you. And I had lots of people do that for me after the tragedy passed. So remember that, folks. Remember that once someone passes away and the funeral's over and that initial shock is done, the loneliest times are 3 to 5 days after the funeral and the months and weeks that come after that. So check on those people that you love and always be good to them.
You know, Mark, you're a warrior, dude. You've been through it. We all know this Donna's story. Excellent human being. That's the only way I feel I can describe Donna. She just was an excellent human being. She was a great wife to you, and she was cool to me. Anytime I met her, she had a huge smile on my face. She would say, "Oh, Mark always used to talk about you. Says he known you since you're in diapers." Yeah, that was Donna. But you're a warrior, dude. Skin cancer.
Yep.
Meningitis almost killed you.
I spent quite a bit of time in the hospital in Arab, Alabama, and about a meningitis at a 2005 event just about took me out. And then having to deal with cancer with Donna. Fishing is my life. It is what I've always wanted to do, and I've been very lucky to have a career in fishing. But as we age, these events change us and shape us and teach us that there are more important things in life. And I'm just very grateful for what all my sponsors did for me. They all stayed with me the 2 years that I was out of fishing, helping Donna. My jersey didn't change much at all during that time period, and that security helped me take care of Donna during those latter days, and I'm grateful for that time period. It's made me a better person and hopefully a better father and a better man.
Well, I think part of that, Mark, is you're right. You are a good father. I've got to hang out with Max, your son, and he's got a little bit of you. And we filmed a little deal with my son Brooks and Max over a little pond, and Max, he wanted to teach. He wanted to go over to Brooks, help him out, very encouraging, and he gets that from you. You know, Mark's has some of the best seminars and videos out there, and he's easy to work with on camera. I'm not going to lie. I say, Mark, talk about this, and he gets it done. But hey, you're like me. You just want to teach people how to catch bass. Now, you do that for a living, but you've never been shy of talking about a certain technique. You've never gone, no, Kevin, let's not talk about that. You're like, okay, let's talk about it.
Well, it's my responsibility to help teach, and I enjoy it when the light bulb comes on and somebody goes, oh, man, now I understand. That made them a better fisherman. I have had the ability to fish all my life and spend 200 days, 220 days, 230 days on the water. So why not share it? Guys that work 9 to 5 or work 50, 60 hours a week, they love fishing just as much as I do. And if on their off time when they go fishing, if I can help them catch 2 more fish and make them more successful, or teach them how to use that spinning rod, or teach them about that big plug, whatever it is, then I'm excited to do that. And I feel like that's just my responsibility to pass on the knowledge that I've accrued over the years.
Well, we are on Baitman Raw, so we've got to talk about some baits, Mark.
All right.
I've seen you looking around in here, and you're like, I've never seen that, or what's that? We all know you're Strike King guy.
Yeah.
But you're an old school fisherman. Let's talk about some old school baits.
Ooh, man.
I've got a Rogue in here that's got your name on. Let's talk about that old Smithwick Rogue.
Well, that's an awful good jerkbait, and I won my first national event on that jerkbait. And something that I picked up on my own and taught myself how to fish in a suspending manner, and have got tons of different jerkbaits in my box. And it is just something that just takes a lot of patience, and it's very, very precise. And that's what I love about jerkbait fishing. And in cold water, there's not a better way. Cold, clean water, there's not a better way catch them. So yeah, that's one of the things I like. I see a bunch of handmade baits in here that you've got. There's an old PD up there. There's a gulp plug from South Carolina. I'm very familiar with all of those and got a bunch of those in my boxes too.
What's some old crankbaits that I know you're sponsored by Strike King, but they won't care. It'd be okay, Crispin and Copley. We can talk about the old stuff that's not made anymore. You like them DB3 Bagleys? Is that one you see hanging on a shelf or somewhere? You got to grab a few of those.
Well, the old DB3s, I used them so much on Barkley to climb over those big stumps on Barkley years ago. That's one that's a favorite of mine, and I still grab those out sometimes when I need to. That's a really cool bait. There's a spinnerbait that I like an awful lot that probably most people don't know about, and that's an old Billy Phillips Little Jewel.
Oh, Billy Phillips. A lot of guys on my YouTube streams talk about the Billy Phillips.
I just ordered some Billy Phillips baits here the other day. Got some double whammies in there. Got a couple more Little Jewels in there. There's a time and place where it does things that nothing else do. And they're back in business. That's a cool deal. That's a local Kentucky Lake thing. Opened up my buddy David Hutchison's dad's old tackle box and saw a bunch of old worms that I hadn't seen in years. I saw a Mr. Twister centipede, which is a bait that I used to absolutely wreck them in the bushes on. Saw a little seeker plastic worm.
I don't even know if I remember the little
just
seeker.
A little straight tail 6-inch worm that was nothing special, just a super soft worm that we caught lots of fish with back in the day. An old Mr. Twister Phenom, purple with a red tail, not fire tail, blood red tail. Right. And I have mined the ledges for years with that old bait.
There are guys to this day that if they can find the old school 10-inch Phenom worm in that color, they will pay you a $20 to $30 bill for it.
Well, those are cool things. Clun one with the old gator tail worm, the ditto gator tail worm. That was part of how he beat us all in the 19 St. John's tournament, catching almost 100 pounds, 35 pounds on the last day. And one of those 9-pounders came on that worm. If he hadn't caught that, if he'd used all those worms, he wouldn't have caught that fish, and I might have won the tournament. But I've got a lot of old stuff that I love to fish, and one of the things I do with my Strike King stuff is I go back to some very old color patterns that are no longer produced, and that gives me an advantage, I think. I had a top 10 tournament on a Strike King Series 3 at Lake Martin a couple years ago on a bait that, dude, I don't know. It's been, I got it in my first order of Strike King back in 2004. Wow. So it's a bleeding series bait, a brown and chartreuse bait, and those big spots and largemouth, they choked that darn thing that week. So,
well, I'll tell you what, I can talk some old school Strike King with you. A bait, very underrated bait from Strike King, diamond shad.
Now, that's a neat deal. I actually caught a fish in the Bassmasters Classic on a diamond shad, the old smooth-sided diamond shad. Yeah. And, man, that bait was taken out of production, and I've probably got about 500 of them. Golly. And it's one of the best lipless baits. It's different than a red-eye shad. Red-eye shad has a much harder pulse to it. I can control the red-eye shad better when around vegetation and things like that. The red-eye shad has a better fall rate, a better shimmy to it when it falls. But sometimes in cold water, you've got to have a very subtle lipless bait, and I reach for that old smooth-sided diamond shad quite frequently. I almost won the Open Championship on that bait in 2005. And it put me right back in the Classic in 2005 with that bait.
Another one I seen you throw all the time. The Strike King soft plastics have really, they revolutionized soft plastic. When the Rage Tail thing hit, you know, you had net bait. I'm a big fan of net bait, the Pack a Crawl, and then you had the Rage Tail come after that. But the one you like, the old Space Monkey.
Oh, the Funky Monkey. Yeah, I love the Space Monkey. It's a very versatile bait. It's a great flipping bait. It's a great swimming bait. It's a small, bulky bait. And I have come in behind several people in tournaments in areas in which it's receiving a lot of pressure. And I could get behind them and catch a lot of fish that just reacted to that bait. That's the only difference. It was the same bushes, the same willow trees. We were all going around and around in a circle. flipping and pitching, and I swam those space monkeys through there at a Pickwick tournament. And at the end of the tournament, those guys were like, "What in the heck were you using?" And I certainly didn't tell them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was the space monkey and I are real good friends.
And that's a bait that a lot of people, they'll go throw a game hog or a structure bug or rage crawl. It'll sit on the shelf. You'll sell a few as a retailer,
Yeah.
But the guys who know about it, when they go, "Oh, that color's, you got that color," they slide them all off the peg.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't talk about it.
There's a lot of those out there.
And there's a lot of guys, from what I know, they really like that Series 4 and Series 5 Strike King crankbait. Doesn't get the hype that the XD series does, but, it catches a lot of
Strike
fish.
King Series 5, before we had the XD series, was the very best crankbait that Strike King made. It's an 8 to 10 foot diver. It is a fish catcher, and I've got tons of them that are just paint's chewed off of them. That Series 4 bait, it's a real sleeper. $300,000 was recently won on that bait. Little known fact that the last Forcewood Cup was won on a Series 4. So that bait is a bait that I've always loved. I did a Strike King Pro Team Journal on it up here on Kentucky Lake, and the green tomato was the one I caught them on, and I trashed them up there on it that show. And it is one that in cold water, with that little bit wider wobble to it, the fish really get after it at times. It's also a great hydrilla bait. The bait has such a wide wobble, it pushes hydrilla out of the way, so you can tick the tops of it very, very well. It's a sleeper, and it's one that I've got plenty in my tackle box.
Now let's talk about this Cantaloupe Spinnerbait. Everyone always asks me.
You always want to talk about.
Here's the deal. I've seen it in action, and it is awesome. But everyone thinks Cantaloupe's like the brand. Cantaloupe is actually, or they say the head's a cantaloupe head. It's actually the skirt color.
It's the skirt color, and it's just it came back. It came from the San Antonio, Texas area. It's a color of a skirt that probably the premier spinnerbait fisherman ever, and I think Rick Clunn will back me up on that. Clunn has always been a master of a spinnerbait, but some of his techniques and some of the things he does came from an angler by the name of Elroy Kruger. Elroy was the premier spinnerbait fisherman in the early 70s, made a couple classics, and had this color skirt back in the 70s. And it's called Elroy in Texas. I ended up using that skirt, putting it on a spinnerbait and catching the largest fish in the first 31 years of Bassmaster competition, a 13.9 that I landed at Richland Chambers on the second day of Mega Bucks back in 1997 that put me kind of on the map in fishing. And I've made a couple of classics since using that cantaloupe colored skirt. It's just one that shows up good in stained water. It's a little bit different, and for whatever reason, it's just become one of my favorites.
Yes, and it freaking catches them. I mean, we fished for like an hour and a half, and I'm throwing my bladed jig, my thunder cricket, and you're just every other cast. I couldn't compete with that. Then again, it's also probably has something to do with who's fishing the spinnerbait versus who's fishing that bladed jig. But
well, that's the thing about a spinnerbait, Kevin. It's not just a straight throw it out and wind it back kind of bait. Angler has to be in tune with what kind of blades you have on the bait, whether it's a Colorado blade, whether it's an Indiana blade, whether it's a willow leaf blade, and understanding how much water turbulence that blade builds and brings the attraction to that bait. So controlling that bait with a blade, controlling that cast and keeping that bait in the strike zone is what an angler has to do with a spinnerbait. We were filming the show the other day, and I had the fish just missing a spinnerbait. I had one big and roll on it. I put a big meaty grub on that spinnerbait. I put a trailer hook on it, and I ended up catching a 5-pounder on the very first cast on that spinnerbait. So knowing how to utilize that spinnerbait and playing with that spinnerbait in multiple situations is how you gain confidence in a spinnerbait. And a spinnerbait still, if I only had one lure to utilize the rest of my life, it would be a spinnerbait.
That was my next question, but you just answered it. Now, what's the one lure? If I gave you $1,000, you said, "Dude, I'm just not going to do it." I'm just. Are you anti-Ned rig, or is there one lure technique you're just like? There's a lot of things I'd rather do than do that. Spy baiting.
That's a tough one because you lose a lot of fish because there's small hooks on it. I've been successful using a spy bait up north in clean water. it's limited to clear water. So that's one thing that I'm not really that fond of. Here's one, Kevin, that you're going to be really, really surprised at, but it is one of my weaknesses. I miss a lot of fish with this bait. I take it away from them, but an old-time buzz bait is probably one of my weakest fishing techniques, just because I miss them. I take a buzz bait anymore and I throw it, and I don't watch the damn thing. I turn my head the opposite way. I'm throwing it on braid, and when my rod loads up, then I'll start reeling it a little faster and catch that fish. That is one of my weaknesses. And the other weakness I have is punching a big weight. I have terrible elbows. My elbows are worn out. I have chronic tendonitis that's led to arthritis. And unless I can catch them quick punching, I just physically can't do it. So that's one I'd probably say I steer away from more than anything else, is punching a 1 ounce to a 1.5 ounce sinker, and or a buzz baiter is the second one that I steer away from.
Well, that answers my question. You know, every guy's got a technique they love and one they don't like. But Mark, we're kind of running out of time. I know you've got a lot of stuff on your plate to do. And by the way, I have your KVD 2.5 wake here. You let me borrow. I didn't catch nothing on it.
How many did I catch with you after we filmed on that thing?
Like 8 or 9.
It was pretty quick.
Good ones. And at first, they were just kind of sharking it. And I said, oh, you need to put a feather on there. And then the rest you caught, they just had it cross in their mouth. That's it's a great little bait for you guys. I've showed it on my live stream. But you need to go to your local tackle store or tackle warehouse. It's one of Mark's sponsors. And order some of those KVD wakes. That's going to be a really killer bait, and it's sneaky that not a lot of guys are going to utilize.
Yeah, it is. It's wake baits are really fun in that everything's visual. You have to be patient. You see that fish get it, you've got to wait till that fish turns and takes that bait down. You're going to miss a lot in the beginning, and it's going to be frustrating. Don't put the thing down. Just quit watching it, and just like I do a buzz bait, they will get it and take it away from you.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate you driving over here to the house for Baitman Raw. We have maintained our social distance. I've been kind of on a quarantine for a while, but I appreciate what you do for the sport locally and on a national level. What you and Wade and Ron Brooks from Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, what all y'all have done to get a national eye on the Asian carp in Kentucky, Barker Lakes, the Cumberland, Tennessee River. So much of that focus was on the Great Lakes. Now it's really shifted, and we got to keep that up. It's not just a problem. It can be a huge national disaster, and I really appreciate all your efforts and Right Waters with Yamaha and AFCO stepping up to the plate. So I thank you so much for that. I think I speak for a lot of guys.
Well, I appreciate that, Kevin, and I'll make a promise to every listener, every fishing license holder, everybody that loves to fish. I will continue this fight with the help of Wade White and Ron Brooks and Frank Fisk from the state of Tennessee, and Yamaha Right Waters on our behalf to make our waters better, try to rectify this problem, and do our dead level best to keep fishing a better, our quality of fishing better than it is anywhere else in the world, and keep our anglers on the water and have productive fishing. I make that pledge to everyone out there. It's something as I age through professional fishing, I don't have a lot more years left in me, Kevin. My body's breaking down, but I promise that I will continue this fight for many years to come.
Well, Mark, I appreciate it. And you want to do another podcast, all you got to do is let me know. I'd love to have you back about once a month or once every 2 months. Hadn't got to fish a whole lot this year on the Elite Series, so we've been knocking out TV shows. We're doing photos, all kinds of stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm glad you reached out to me to do the TV show. I've had an exciting time. It's fun to do. It can be challenging, and I embrace it. So.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Kevin. You look at things from a different angle, different than anybody I've ever worked with on that camera. You're quick to see something that I may not see. It's great. Even though you don't have a rod in your hand, you're back there fishing. You're a fisherman, and you understand what people want to see from the camera perspective, and that brings a lot of credibility to what we're doing there, and I'm just grateful that you're so proficient at what you do, and heck, it's a lot of fun to have you in the boat so that I can hassle you the whole day.
I know. I get a lot of crap. I can tell you that. So, but Mark, thanks again. We're going to jump off here. I'll link all Mark's social media, his Instagram, which is really good, it's taken off, his Facebook page, and we'll link Bass TV, his YouTube channel. It's going to be all in the description there. And thanks again, guys, for listening to Baitman Raw.